Vamos a jugar en el 43. Vamos a seguir jugando en el 43, pero ese partido es mi cosa, ¿no?
What's happening, everybody? Sit back and let's have a blast. It's the Theassassinrapper podcast, the super duper broadcast. I'll be talking about books, comics and movies. I'm feeling it already, man. This is kinda groovy. Whether you love crime fiction, scary stories or poems, all you gotta do is make the Theassassinrapper your podcast home. Hello everybody and welcome along to the Theassassinrapper podcast. Now this is my very first podcast. And trust me, it is a really exciting venture for me, and I hope that excitement will come through the speakers and you will really enjoy it. Now, why it is exciting for me is because I don't really know much about how people put podcasts together. I don't listen to podcasts. The only podcasts I listen to are traditional radio shows on traditional radio. If I miss them, I might listen to the podcast, the repeat of the show, etc. But what I do know is that I'm going to be talking about things that I am really passionate about. That is books, music, movies, games, and a lot of different subjects. Now, today is the first podcast I am broadcasting, but I felt it an interesting idea to make it a 1980s edition. The reason why I have this show a 1980s special is because so many things that are happening today are influenced from the 1980s. Hence, Stranger Things and so many other shows that are super popular that are based in the 1980s. Now, why do I love 1980s culture myself? Well, it is easy. The movies were awesome. You had Ghostbusters, you had Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you had A Nightmare on Elm Street. You had so many big blockbusters, and it's not only the blockbusters, it is the independent gems that you could pick up in the video stores. Now, people that weren't even born in the 90s and that weren't even born until the noughties could know all about the 1980s. And why? Because it is so popular and because they can read up on it, and it is featured so heavily in magazines and lots more. Now, I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things, which ye already should know if ye are subscribed to my YouTube channel, The Theassassinrapper, and if you're not subscribed, I would really appreciate if you did subscribe to The Theassassinrapper and hit the bell. Now, this being a 1980s special, I'm just going to take a look at the video shop. Now, the very first video shop was in a store in Kassel, Germany in 1975. It was by a film collector, Eckhard Baum. Now, he loaned out his Super 8 reels to just his friends first and neighbours, but then he realised he could capitalise on his huge collection by renting them out to everyone. He named his shop the Videothek. Now that was a nod to it being like a video library, which it is, and that's how the video shop first formed, and then it evolved into something huge, which went from the independent family-owned stores to the big, huge, massive chain stores, Blockbusters. Now, Blockbusters was a huge store, and unfortunately, Blockbuster is no more except for one store, and that's one store in Oregon. Now, in 2004, there were 9,000 locations still in operation worldwide. But then, by 2013, unfortunately, the company was forced to shut down. But one owner defied the odds. Now, this owner is Sandy Harding, who has the last Blockbusters in Bend in Oregon. Now, she said that unfortunately it could close someday, and some people are telling her that she should make it a museum, but she's really happy about boasting, and not even boasting, but just knowing that she could hold on to the last Blockbusters. Let me just bring ye back to the movies of the 1980s. If ye are familiar with them, it will be awesome. And if ye are not, then you can go and check them out for yourself and see what you think of them. But before I go into detail about the movies, let me just tell you, the artwork of the 1980s books and movies were absolutely amazing. I often say that if the Nancy Drew books just stayed with the Carolyn Keene covers of the 1980s, where you could see the characters, like if there was a snake in it, if there was a boat in it, if there was a beach in it, you could see the beach in the cover, you could see it in the picture, you could see what characters in the book. It was all there right in front of you. And I remember going into the shop as a kid and looking in awe at them and saying, wow, this is really, really awesome. And I would definitely buy the book, and if I hadn't the money, it would definitely be on my to-buy list for the next time I went into the store. Now, this was the same for the Hardy Boys books and so many more books, and the same with the movies. The artwork was absolutely awesome. They went into rich detail about what characters were actually in the book or in the movie, and whether it was underwater or in the woods or up in space. It showed that usually in the picture, in the main artwork. Now, I'm just going to name out a list of huge movies from the 1980s. You might have heard of them, you might have seen them. And if you're born after the 1980s, you can check these out. Okay, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Now, the other Nightmare on Elm Streets are awesome too. Personally, I love all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, and I love all the Friday the 13th. And I really loved going into the horror section of the video shops and seeing all the Friday the 13th and the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all the buzz about Texas Chainsaw Massacre being banned, and then when people got to see it, and same with Clockwork Orange and all the rest of it. But they were not 1980s movies, but it was still a 1980s buzz. It was 1980s conversation. So let's go into Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The way he held up the sword in the cover. You should check out these covers. If you Google them, you'll see them, and you'll see what I'm talking about. The rich detail. It tells the story, and it is absolutely awesome. You've got Fright Night, Halloween 3. Another really good one that I love the cover is Short Circuit. It's just the picture of the robot, a lightning strike coming down, hitting the robot, a lovely coloured sky in the background, and just Short Circuit written in red, and then it says, something wonderful has happened. Number 5 is alive. So it tells you in the picture, they say a picture tells a million words. Well, in the 1980s artwork, that is so true. You've got The Reanimator, which is a H.P. Lovecraft classic tale of horror. This cover is absolutely unbelievable when it comes to horror. It's this scientist guy in white coat behind a desk holding a test tube with some yellow potion with vapor going up in the air, and there's a head on the table, and there's just so much more. You know what the film has. Well, you know it's not going to be a nice kind of like comedy movie anyway. So it's the same as if it was a comedy movie, it would not have horror detailed that much. So what I'm saying is the artwork would really give you a taste of what you can expect. Then you had John Carpenter's The Fog. Loved the artwork. Transformers the movie. Masters of the Universe, another great example. And these are all great movies too, by the way. I'm stressing on the artwork, but it's not just artwork, it is the movies. The movies were unbelievable. Now, I'm going to talk about more of that later on, but I'm just going to run through a list of the big movies of the 1980s first. You've got Blue Velvet. You've got The Goonies, which is an absolute standout masterpiece, if you ask me. And you've got Willow. You've got Back to the Future. You've got The Running Man. You've got Big Trouble in Little China. Now, I know I'm going on a lot about artwork, but the cover, the poster of Big Trouble in Little China is probably one of my favourite posters of all time. And I was so happy when I went into my local comic shop a couple of months ago and saw Big Trouble in Little China comics and Big Trouble in Little China graphic novels. And I bought them as fast as I could. Flight of the Navigator is another brilliant movie by Walt Disney. You had The Fly, you had Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and of course the hugely successful horror from John Carpenter, They Live. Now, if you're a John Carpenter fan and you haven't seen They Live, I would highly recommend you go out and see that movie as soon as possible. Okay. Now, the list gets bigger and bigger. The Lost Boys, Predator, Star Trek, Beetlejuice, Mad Max, An American Werewolf in London. All huge movies of the 1980s. But what about the music styles? You had glam rock, you had Skid Row, you had Poison, you had all these bands paving the way for other type of rock bands that came after them. Personally, I loved Poison's song Every Rose Has Its Thorn, etc. So that was another really, really good thing about the 1980s. In Cork, where I live, basketball was absolutely huge. Now, unfortunately, I didn't go to as many games as I would have liked, but they were sponsored by this local food chain, Burgerland, at the time, and from pictures I saw and videos, the stadium was packed to the brim, and they used to bring over really, really good college stars from America to play ball, and it was a really, really big deal. Now, basketball, of course, is still big in Cork, but I don't know, do they get the same crowds that they used to get back in the 80s? Well, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. This is my very, very first podcast, Theassassinrapper, and it is where I'm going to be talking about the things that I am passionate about, and I hope you will enjoy what I'm talking about and want to listen again to the next one. The podcasts will be every Friday at 9. They will be put up, so you can listen from every Friday at 9 to new podcast. Now, these podcasts are all about things that I'm passionate about. So, hopefully my passion will come across through your speakers. Now, if you have any comments or suggestions about this podcast, you can comment on my YouTube channel on the relevant videos and let me know. Also, if you are not familiar with my YouTube channel, let me just give you a little idea of what it is like. I love doing animated horror stories. So you will get a lot of animated horror stories on my channel, and I also love recording music. So you can check out my music videos on my channel, which is Theassassinrapper. Now, I love reviewing things because I love shopping, so I will be reviewing books and I will be reviewing a lot more. Speaking of books, every podcast I will be doing a book review, and today's book of the week is Chris Carter, Hunting Evil. Oh, I'm a huge Chris Carter fan, and his Robert Hunter thrillers are always amazing, and I always stay up late reading them, and it is just... The way he writes is so awesome. He makes it look so easy, but you know it is so hard because he knows so much about different subjects. Now, in this particular book, he knows a lot of different ways people can get killed by a serial killer, and that serial killer is Lucian Folter. Now, Lucian Folter is the most dangerous killer the FBI has ever known. Now, Robert Hunter put Folter behind bars, but Lucian has escaped. Now, he's intent on revenge. But this revenge does not just last a couple of days or a week. This revenge is on a huge scale. He tries to really tear Robert Hunter apart psychologically. It's not just a quick method of revenge. This is a really thought out plan Lucian has. So it's Lucian Folter, the serial killer, and he's been chased by so many different organisations. The FBI, the cops, Robert Hunter himself, and the book goes into that whole kind of history, because you would not need actually to read another book before this, I would imagine, because I don't think I read as much of a Chris Carter fan I am. I don't think I read it. But he says, this is the author's note, Hunting Evil is the 10th novel in the Hunter thriller series. And he goes on to say then down a couple of sentences, though all other books in this series can be read individually, as the storyline in one novel does not depend on a previous book, Hunting Evil is different. I would recommend that you also read An Evil Mind at some point to fully understand the history between Hunter and Lucian. So I'll just point that out. Chris himself says that he would recommend that you also read An Evil Mind to fully understand the history between Hunter and Lucian. And believe me, the history is huge. The history is deep. The resentment is deep. That's Chris Carter, Hunting Evil, and it is true what they say on the cover, as addictive as a TV box set. So this week's book of the week is Chris Carter, Hunting Evil. Well, that's about it for this week's podcast, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Each show is going to be about 20 minutes long, and it could go over 20 minutes sometimes, but the main thing is I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please let me know on my YouTube channel on the relevant video where I will be talking about my podcast, or any video actually. And if you do check out my YouTube channel, Theassassinrapper, I hope you will enjoy my content, and please make yourself known. Thanks for listening to this podcast, everyone. I will see you next Friday at 9.
Yeah.